Hi there, this is James Swanwick, and you're listening to the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle Podcast, where you learn how to take back control over alcohol and live a life of health, wealth, love, and happiness. I am James Swanwick, and today we are talking to Jenny Ungless, who is 52, who lives on the north coast of Northern Ireland. And Jenny runs a proofreading business. And as of today, Jenny is 124 days alcohol-free, which is incredible. And Jenny was one of our Project 90 clients and has a very interesting story to share about her alcohol-free journey. Jenny, so great to have you here. How you doing?
I'm great, James. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
What does 124 days alcohol-free feel like, first of all?
It feels great. And if you told me 4 months ago that I would be 4 months alcohol-free, I would probably have laughed in your face.
And why would that have been so ridiculous a notion, do you think?
Because I think I had tried for so long to kick the habit, largely by myself, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it on my own. And that's why I eventually reached out to Project 90. And it's not an exaggeration to say it's changed my life.
Tell us a little bit about your life, if you would, Jenny. Give us a little bit of context.
Okay, so I grew up in Northern Ireland, went to England to study at university, ended up staying there, worked in the civil service, worked in Parliament for quite a number of years, got tired of politics eventually, and set up my own career coaching business, which I ran for just over a decade. Then I got tired of London, tired of the rat race, and came back home to the north coast of Northern Ireland, where I've now settled. Met my husband, got married, and within about a year of our getting married, Clive was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is incurable cancer of the blood and bone marrow. So the next 5 years really became a roller coaster of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, stem cell transplants, more chemotherapy, until eventually it became clear that his body just wasn't responding to treatment anymore. And sadly, he died in May of this year at home with me. And that really was the point at which I realized my life could go in one of two ways. I could keep pouring booze on my head in an ineffectual attempt to deal with the grief and everything else, or I could find a way of moving on that was more positive and more worthwhile. So that really was a big turning point for me. That was the point at which I knew I needed to reach out and get help and support. Otherwise, I really would end up in a complete mess.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jenny. You said that you were married and then within a year he was diagnosed. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Take us back to that time, if you will, and tell us about married life for the first year, and then when you both received that news, what impact did that have on you?
Yeah. It came out of the blue completely. I mean, we got married, we'd just literally moved into our dream home, which I'm still in. Everything was looking rosy, and Clive went for a standard checkup, just an annual checkup with the doctor, and his blood results came back slightly iffy. The doctor said, I think we'll get this checked out, and we had lots more tests, and it was diagnosed. He was completely asymptomatic at that point. So had it not been for the rigor of our doctor, it probably would have been picked up until much later. The fact that we knew from day one it was uncurable, and we were really just playing a game of time, was difficult. It was a bit of, I suppose it was a sword of Damocles hanging over our head from the beginning. It was a case of not knowing how long we would have, not knowing what kind of quality of life we would have. And that was difficult. And if I'm honest, my coping mechanism was often alcohol, which was not a good coping mechanism, but that's what I often used, just to, I suppose, what lots of people use it for, just to numb the edges, really.
How old were you both when Clive was diagnosed?
I was in my late 40s. Clive was older than me. He was 18 years older than me, so he was 65. He actually used to be, I shouldn't tell you this, he actually used to be my teacher at school. He taught me classics at school. He was a very young teacher. And I hadn't seen him since I'd left school. And when I came back here to Northern Ireland, we completely randomly met up, and the rest was history. So I suppose it's quite a romantic story, really.
Did he charm you, or did you charm him?
Well, like every other girl at school, I'd had the classic teenage crush on him. So, but yeah, we charmed each other. We had lots in common. We both loved language, words, cricket, Tottenham Hotspur. So we had lots in music. We had lots in common. He was just a great, great man, a legend, really, irreplaceable, completely irreplaceable. But that's something that I am working through. There are some very, very difficult days, but again, I know that those days would be made more difficult if alcohol was still in the mix. And at least I am facing what I have to face with a much better degree of clarity than I would have had before. So,
you said Clive passed in May of 2020.
Yeah.
Just take us through the last 6 months, maybe 6 months to a year, and just describe what that was like for you and for him, right up until the day of his passing, if you're willing to share, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So it was probably about a year before he died that it became clear that the chemotherapy he was on just wasn't working anymore. They tried him on a few different versions. I mean, I have to say we had gold standard care. We had wonderful care, but his body just wasn't responding to treatment. So the last year, he just gradually became less and less well. By early in this year, he was in and out of hospital several times. And then, of course, lockdown occurred. So the last 3 weeks when he was in hospital, I wasn't even able to go and visit him. That was very difficult. And at that point, I actually rang his consultant and said, look, Clive's not getting better, is he? And he said, no. I said, how long has he got? He says, we're talking weeks. So at that point, I said, I just want him home. So we brought him home. And at that stage, it was just palliative care. And he had 3 weeks at home with me before he died. And that was precious time. We were in lockdown, obviously, so no one could come and visit. And in one way, that was sad because there were friends he didn't get to see again. And in another way, selfishly, it was nice because it was just, we had carers in and out and that sort of thing, and doctors and nurses, but most of the time it was just us. So, we had those last few weeks together, and that was important to me.
I'd imagine for him also.
Yeah. He got to see his beloved garden. He got to listen to music. He got to watch a bit of cricket. Unfortunately, there wasn't much sport on, so that was a shame. But we just, he gradually got weaker and weaker, and he was in bed the whole time. But he was in good spirits, really, until the last couple of days. He wasn't in pain. When he was in pain, we had good pain control. So, and he slipped away at the end, just holding my hand. So it was difficult, but it could have been so much worse. So.
Yeah. What things did he say to you, or did you say to him before his passing, that stick out to you, that stick in your memory? Something that maybe he shared with you, something that you shared with him. A lot of people, who've suffered death in their family, a lot of times they don't get an opportunity to say goodbye. It happens suddenly. You had, a long time. I guess you say 5 years, but probably in the last 3 weeks, you had 3 weeks. So was there something poignant or deliberate or intentional that you and he did together or said to each other?
Looking back, we probably didn't maybe talk as much as we could have, but I suppose in one way, everything that needed to be said had been said. As you say, we'd had a long time to become accustomed. We knew what was going to happen. We talked about the practical arrangements and his wishes and that sort of thing, although obviously everything changed because of COVID anyway. But the one thing I remember him saying to me in the last few days was, he just said, "Jenny, keep going." I think that was something that stuck with me and has stayed with me. And a large part of my motivation for getting alcohol free and trying to become that better version of myself really is because I know that's what Clive would have wanted, and I know that he would have been so proud of me. So keep going was what he said.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to actually, with your permission, read out an email that you sent to me on Sunday, February 9th of 2020.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I have for those listening, I have an email list, a newsletter. I write an email a day, a daily email. Some people love it. Some people are like, "Get me away from this guy. I don't want an email a day in my inbox." But for those who are interested in the alcohol-free lifestyle, people get an email a day from me. And on Sunday, February 9th, you emailed me in response to an email that I wrote, which was called, "Sorry, alcohol, this isn't working out. I feel frustrated when I'm around you, irritable, you disrupt my sleep, etc., etc." So I was actually writing like a letter to alcohol. And you actually responded to that. And I was actually in Mexico at the time. I was on a business mastermind. This is before the COVID shutdown. And your email says, I'll just read it here. It says, "Hi, James, thank you for this. My situation is that my husband is dying of cancer. I think that a drink helps me deal with it, but obviously it doesn't. I need to enjoy the moments we have." So I'm just curious, you seemed at that point to have an idea that alcohol wasn't serving you, wasn't serving your best interests. Would you just maybe elaborate on that a little bit as to what you were starting to come to terms with or starting to realize around that time in February?
I mean, I'd known for a long time before that, really, that alcohol wasn't serving me. And I'd been trying to kick it probably for 18 months or so. And with I suppose, varying degrees of success, but ultimately limited success. So I would have a sober stretch and then I'd drink again, and that cycle would keep repeating itself. I was getting to the stage where I was having longer periods of not drinking, but always ended up going back to it. And eventually, and when it's interesting, I don't remember that email. I don't remember. I knew I had contacted you long before I joined up with Project 90. I don't remember that it was in February, but yeah, I knew I needed to tackle it, and I was struggling to find an effective way to do that. Now, looking back now from the vantage point of 4 months and just having finished the Project 90 first stage and so on, I can see exactly what I was missing. And it was the support, the community, and the accountability. And I didn't have that. I had friends around me who knew I was struggling. Clive knew I was struggling, although he could see I was making some progress. But honestly, people around you, however much they love you, if they don't have the problem with alcohol that you have, they just don't get it. However supportive they want to be, they don't understand. And people can be so well-meaning, but, friends might say to me something like, well, why don't you just try harder? I actually went to my doctor at one point for some help and support, and she said, well, why don't you just have one drink? There was no understanding that for some people, one's too many and 20's not enough. So the thing that Project 90 gave to me was being in a group of people where, the baseline for everyone was we are all trying to reconfigure our relationship with alcohol. That was the given for everyone. So everyone, regardless of where they were in their alcohol journey, or regardless of what stage of rock bottom they had got to, everyone had that same basic common aim, which meant, in fact, that much of the time we spent on group calls, we weren't actually talking about alcohol at all. We were talking about all sorts of other things. And that, again, was what was so precious to me, that on one level, we were almost putting the whole alcohol thing to one side, because that was a given. That was why we were there. So let's talk about other things. Let's talk about how we get more clarity. Let's talk about how we develop ourselves. Let's talk about things we're struggling with in other aspects of our lives. And just that sense of community and common purpose was the thing that I was missing. And looking back, it's easy to see that, but it took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah, it's funny how people we normalize alcohol, don't we? Like we normalize it. It's part of the social fabric. It begins when we're children, when our parents say to us, oh, no, you can't drink alcohol now. You can have it when you're older. It's almost like a rite of passage. And then the rite of passage turns into, well, it's just something that you do. This is just the norm. And then it comes into something that people offer to you to be a good host. If you're at a dinner party, you say, oh, can I get you some wine? Can I get you a beer? And it just becomes normalized, doesn't it? It's just normalized. And so it's very challenging to break out of that societal matrix, if you like, especially when you're later on. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now, heading towards 50. You're in your early 50s. That's like 25, 30 years of social conditioning, or actually practicing consuming alcohol. It's actually a lifetime of social conditioning. So were there particular times where you found it really challenging to break out of that social conditioning, where maybe people were drinking, you didn't want to, and then you towed the line and you did, or maybe there was something that happened that was like you had a breakthrough. You want to just speak to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're so right about the social conditioning. I mean, I was brought up in a family that didn't drink, so it was probably not even when I went to university, because I was too much of a swot to drink too much at uni. But when I joined the civil service, that would have been the sort of early 90s. Very, very big drinking culture. And then I moved into Parliament. And if I thought the drinking culture was bad in the civil service, let me tell you, in Parliament, it was off the scale. You know, subsidised bars open all day, drink at lunchtime, absolutely, drink after work, completely. You know, it just was so embedded in the culture. And I'm not saying that everyone who works in Parliament is a drunk, but for anyone who had a tendency to drink quite a lot, it was just made so easy. So that was probably where my problems began, really. The interesting thing is that when I moved back over here, my social circle here is not a heavy drinking circle. My friends are the kind of people who'll have a glass of wine or two if they're out for dinner, but they're not drinkers. They would be what anyone would call a normal drinker. So I was probably the exception. You know, I was the one who would be having the 2 extra glasses of wine. I would be the one who would have more than everyone else. So I wasn't under social pressure in my environment here over the last number of years. So I can't even use that as an excuse, to be honest. And I realised that, you know, certainly through Project 90, lots of people have often said, and lots of people do say this, that it's the social situations that can be the most difficult and can be the most challenging. And I have to put my hand on my heart and say that wasn't the case for me, because that wasn't what my social environment was like. So I don't even have that as an excuse. But I think I increasingly just came to use it, as I said, as a coping mechanism, as what I perceived to be a coping mechanism to take the edge off painful feelings and painful situations.
And what have you come to learn now about alcohol taking the edge off and dealing with painful situations?
That it is at best a temporary fix, and at worst something which actually just makes everything worse. You know, alcohol doesn't take pain away. It just adds to it by the shame, the guilt, the hangover, the not being fully present. You know, it brings nothing. It adds nothing. It serves you in no way whatsoever.
Just a quick message from our show sponsor, Project 90, the program that helps you enjoy life more by getting ultimate power over alcohol. Project 90 helps high achievers regain their confidence, be more present with friends and family, get clear, reduce stress and anxiety, sleep better, increase focus and productivity, and feel a whole lot better. Project 90 does this by helping members quit alcohol for at least 90 days, whilst providing 6 months of accountability and support. The program has an 87% success rate of members reaching at least 90 consecutive days alcohol-free on their first attempt. Members get a one-on-one accountability coach, a community of like-minded people to interact with, 100% confidentiality, and what's more, members tell us it's fun. Project 90 members are mostly over the age of 35, entrepreneurs, executives, top professionals, or retirees. If you're in your late 30s or 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s or older, and you consider yourself a high achiever, and you're ready to upgrade your life by quitting alcohol for at least 90 days and maybe more, then you can have a free 20-minute exploratory call with one of Project 90's former clients, now coaches. If you'd like to book that call, you can go to jamesswanwick.com/schedule. That's jamesswanwick.com/schedule. Or if you're on your phone in the US right now, you can text the word Project 90 to the number 44222, and we'll email you the schedule link. That's texting the word Project 90 to the number 44222. Okay, let's get back to the show. You and I emailed back and forth a few times, actually, between February and when you actually enrolled in Project 90. There's an email here from you dated Tuesday, June 16. I'm just going to share just a couple things in here, which is just what you want, why you wanted to quit alcohol, if you're willing, of course.
I don't know what you're going to say.
Well, you very, very simply said the two most important things for me would be, first and foremost, to stay sober. To me, that underpins everything else. If you think of an inverted triangle, my sobriety is the tip of that triangle. Without it, everything else is bound to topple. I'm willing to pretty much do anything to keep my sobriety intact. So that was the first one. And then the second one was, you said, secondly, I need to plan and implement the next stage of my life. I have a pretty good idea what I want to do. It is entrepreneurial, but I would be so glad of others' support, encouragement, and intellectual input. Obviously, underlying everything is my need to process my grief, which I know will take a long time. Clive was the light of my life, and he is irreplaceable. But the two priorities above are, I believe, things that will help me to do that. And then you went on a little bit more from there. But I guess my question is, do you feel like you're on that path now? Because you said back in June, your priorities were to stay alcohol free. You used the word sober, but I like to use the word alcohol free. And then secondly, planning and implementing the next stage of your life. So that email was sent to me mid-June. Do you feel like you're on those paths?
Yes, absolutely. Not only have I been alcohol-free since the 7th of June, I think it was, but I'm in a mindset now where I just don't see myself ever lifting a drink again. I know people often say, don't think about forever, think about the next 90 days, think about the next 6 months, whatever, but I have gained so much in and from the last 4 months that I see no way at all in which alcohol can serve me, and I see no need for it at all. I have no desire for it. In terms of what have the last 4 months looked like, I've done so many things, James, that I would never, ever have done. A, because I wouldn't have had the focus, the energy, and B, because I just wouldn't have been in the right place to do it. So, for example, I've recently set up my own proofreading business with a business partner. I wouldn't have had the energy to do that. I'm currently in the middle of training to be a Samaritan, which is a UK charity which provides a 24/7 listening service to people who are anxious, stressed, even suicidal. It's something I've been interested in for a long time, but I'd never have been in a position to offer that kind of support to anyone else, given the mess that I was in. I've started studying for a diploma, actually in trauma and addiction counselling, because it's just something that, through my own experience, really interests me. And I would never have had the stamina to do that level of academic study on top of setting up a new business and everything else. So my life has changed unrecognizably just in 4 months, which makes me, despite the fact that I am, and I suspect will be for a long time, processing grief, it makes me excited about my future in a way that I didn't think I would be capable of being. And that is, the foundation for all of that is being alcohol free without a doubt.
Obviously, when you join our community here, the focus is to get you to rewire your brain around alcohol so you're powerfully choosing the alcohol-free life. But you also said there that your main focus, or one of those main focuses, and what will remain so, is processing grief.
Yeah.
So how was the community that you were in for those 90 days within Project 90, how did that community help you to process your grief? Not so much quitting alcohol, but actually processing your grief.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that was most valuable. The group were just fantastically supportive. Everyone has their own challenges. There were other people in the group who were dealing with children with special needs, dealing with elderly parents who needed extra care. Everyone has something in their life that is a challenge. And the group was such a safe place where you could share really quite personal feelings and thoughts and, tears and vulnerabilities, and everyone was so supportive, and just many of the lessons that we were taught were so helpful to me. One of the things which was most helpful to me, specifically in processing grief, was something that Coach Kevin said to me very early on, which was that life is a series of meetings and partings. And I just find that a really helpful and comforting way to look at it. Sometimes people talk about grief in terms of, well, one door closes and another one opens and that sort of thing. And I find that very final. But the idea of life is a series of meetings and partings, I find a very constructive way to process some of my feelings. So specifically in terms of some of the advice, suggestions and approaches that I was given, and then more generally in terms of just the supportiveness and open-armedness, if that is a word, of the group. It was somewhere I could come and not be afraid to be vulnerable, not be afraid to show my sadness. There were times on group calls when I cried. Lots of people do. I always say you're not a proper member of Project 90 until you've cried on screen. But that's just a demonstration of of how safe a place it is to share. And that was something that really, really gave me a lot of emotional support.
Mm. I also want to acknowledge you because you live in Northern Ireland, and of course the time difference between Northern Ireland and many of the group coaching calls that we have is pretty big. I'm on a weekly call on Thursday evenings, which is Friday morning for where I am at the moment in Australia. And what time did my weekly group call start, Jenny? For you, what time was it in Northern Ireland when they started?
For me, that was 1:00 in the morning. And sometimes we didn't wrap up until nearly 3.
Yeah. It was supposed to be an hour call, but we just got talking, didn't we?
Well, there were times you could have gone on all night, to be honest. I mean, they were great calls. But I made a commitment at the very beginning, and I made this commitment to Kevin that I would attend every single group call. Now, I did miss a couple of the Thursday night ones because there were a couple of times when I had to have an early start on the Friday morning. So, but I was doing a group call Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then my one-to-one coaching call with Kevin on a Wednesday. Why did I do that? Not just to get my money's worth. I suppose it's partly I am quite an all or nothing person, but I knew that if this was going to stick and I was going to make this work, I had to give it everything I had. I was going to throw the kitchen sink at it because I kind of felt if this didn't work for me, nothing was going to work for me. So I knew that I wanted to give it everything, and that's what I did. And I think that stood me in good stead.
Mm. Yeah, you said to me a couple of weeks ago that when Clive died, you had a choice. You could keep pouring booze down your throat and sink into a spiral of despair, or you could find a way forward.
Yeah.
It certainly, from my inspection, it seems like you definitely chose moving forward, especially demonstrated by the fact that you were up at 1 a.m. to attend one of those weekly group calls. I had to remind myself of that often when I saw you there. I'm like, oh, it's the middle of the night there. But it's fascinating, isn't it? Like, even myself, all human beings will come up with excuses as to why we can't do something, or why something won't work, or someone won't like me if I do this. I mean, even at the moment, I'm going through a process of securing a literary agent for my upcoming book, which is aimed at helping people to quit drinking. And it's got to the point. It's a couple of days ago. It was at the point where let's now reach out to my extensive network and try to attract and secure a literary agent. And I drew up a list of all the names of acquaintances and friends and people in my network that I've accumulated over a decade or so, 20 years living in America, quite frankly. And I still felt this kind of like natural pain in myself, like, oh, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to like reach out to that person. I haven't really spoken to them in a year or so. And now I'm the one time I am reaching out, I'm asking for something. Oh, I feel awkward about that. It's incredible. And I'm usually fearless when it comes to that. But even me, like I felt that kind of like story. I was starting to create stories, and I had self-judgment, and then I had fear, and then I thought, I'm going to spend all this time doing it, and what if it doesn't work out and I don't get a literary agent, and I've spent all this money and time putting into this project. So that's coming up to me, and I coach people on this stuff, on how to overcome this stuff. So it's a very natural feeling, but you actually just went, you know what? James's weekly call starts at 1 a.m. in Northern Ireland, and you could have come up with 100 different reasons and stories why not to attend, and yet you still did. So what did you learn maybe about yourself in making that choice and sticking to it?
Well, I mean, I suppose the whole purpose for me of going all in, or leaning in fully, as you guys would say, was, I suppose, to prove to myself that I did have stickability. That and also, it's funny, one of the things which we talked a little bit before about being alcohol free, giving you much more clarity. One of the things that has become very, very clear to me over the last few months is that one of the things that's really, really important to me is integrity of my word. So if I say I will do something, I will do it. If I say I will be somewhere, I will be there. And it's actually the thing which pisses me off most about other people. when other people aren't like that, it's probably the thing that disproportionately irritates me, and maybe that's because it's something that's so important to me. And that would not have been the case when I was drinking. Everything fell by the wayside, and I constantly let people down. But as that clarity came through for me, I realized how important that is. And therefore, having made the commitment to Kevin at the beginning that I was going to be on every call, I was going to be on every call. And, that's notwithstanding the fact that, yeah, sometimes it was very late at night or whatever. But you know what, James, I looked forward to those calls so much, especially in the early days. They were a lifeline to me. We were in lockdown. I just lost my husband. I couldn't visit friends. I couldn't see people. And just having that community of people who were all rooting for each other. The calls in the very, very early days, as you know, it took me ages to get going on Marco Polo and start posting little videos and things, because I'm actually quite shy. And in the early days, the group calls were kind of, oh God, I hope Kevin doesn't ask me anything. And within a few weeks, I was actively looking forward to the calls, and weekends where, I'm just going to have to sit and watch 25 Marco Polos over and over again because there aren't any group calls. So they became something that was a really important part of the fabric of my life. Yeah.
I love that.
And now that I'm in the alumni group and I only have 2 calls a week, and it's not that I didn't have other things to do. I've been very busy with the business and with other things, but they say, don't you, that your your actions show what your real priorities are. You can say something's a priority, but actually it's only a priority if you do it. Yeah. And this was a real priority for me.
Yeah, and I felt that, and I sensed that, and I saw that certainly, visually every week when you turned up to my weekly call at 1 a.m. Northern Ireland time. So again, I just want to acknowledge you for your commitment and for being on those calls at such an uncommon hour. And I also want to thank you for, inspiring other members as well, because, it doesn't require a big inspirational speech. It can just simply be sharing what is going on with you at the moment. It can be you saying, I'm really struggling at the moment, or you can say, I've had a really crappy week. And that inspires someone. It inspires someone else to be able to share about their week, which makes them feel better. And then that triggers conversation, and it triggers healing, and it triggers sometimes being given the freedom to vent. It's remarkable how many times I see, grown adults, because most of us are in, the youngest member I think we had while you were going through was probably in her late 30s. Most of the members are late, 40s, 50s, 60s. It's amazing when you see people who've never really had an opportunity to just be able to share what's going on for them in a safe space. First of all, just to be able to share at all, because sometimes we're lonely or we're isolated and there's just no one to talk these things through. But then secondly, to be able to share in a place where people don't criticize or condemn or make you wrong for whatever it is that you're sharing.
Yeah.
So in you doing that and you sharing and you being so open and vulnerable about what was going on with you, especially with you processing grief regarding Clive, that was huge for so many other members I know, and they were all touched and inspired by you, and you have left a lasting impact on those people. So thank you for that, Jenny.
I think one of the things for me that was really interesting and valuable about the whole process is when people do share, and I think it's one of the reasons why you and Kevin always encourage people to post on Marco Polo as well. When someone shares something, you never know what someone else is going to take from it. And what someone else takes from it and gains from it may absolutely not necessarily even be the central point that you're making. But people will take their own interpretation or their own nugget of wisdom from something that someone else posts or says or shares. And to me, that's the great value of the group process. You know, one person in a group meeting of 9 people could share something, and each of the other 8 people could take something completely different but equally valuable from what that person shares. And to me, that was the value of the group interactions. Yeah.
Well, Jenny, keep going, as Clive said. Keep going. That's your mantra, I suspect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And what does keep going look like for you?
Keep going looks like making a success of the business, carrying on with my diploma, which I hope to finish before Christmas. And then I've been accepted to do an MSc in psychology, which I'll do by distance learning with an English university, which will start in January. And I will have to write a thesis as part of that, and I will probably, it's early days yet, but I'm interested in the area around people who have had a problem with alcohol quite often have issues around career and purpose, which are different from people who haven't necessarily had that struggle. I think it's a mixture of regret for wasted time, wanting to make amends, wanting to give back in some way. And so I'm quite interested in some work around the area of particularly helping people who possibly felt they've wasted a chunk of their life or not lived it to their best ability because of alcohol, helping those people move forward. And that's the sort of area I'd like to do a bit of research in. So yeah, lots on the horizon.
I love it. And congratulations. It all sounds very exciting. Just to let the listeners or viewers know, I've actually experienced Jenny's proofreading business, which is amazing. I'm coming out with Jenny proofread my book proposal, which was amazing. Thank you so much. And then again, Jenny also proofread my gratitude journal, which is should be coming out early 2021, which is a daily journal to help tap into our unconscious and rewire limiting beliefs and get us and to reduce stress and anxiety. So thank you so much for that as well. What is the name of that business, and where can folks listening find it and make contact with you?
We are called Jackson Ray, www.jacksonray.com, which is Ray is W-R-A-Y. The company's named that because my business partner is called Stuart Ray, and Clive's surname was Jackson. I don't use his name because professionally I've always been Ungless, but the company was named partly in honor of him because he was as much of a wordsmith as I am, and he would have been proud to see what we're doing. So it's just something that keeps him tied into my life as I go forward.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for sharing with us on this interview, and I so appreciate you being vulnerable and being so forthcoming with your experience around grief and trauma. Of course, Clive sounds like he was a wonderful man. He and I share the same love of an English Premier League soccer team named Tottenham Hotspur. Our American listeners probably don't know what I'm talking about or don't care to, but Clive certainly had very fine taste in English soccer teams. So I acknowledge you, Clive, up there. I'm a huge Tottenham Hotspur fan. But all jokes aside, thank you so much for sharing with us. We so appreciate you, Jenny. And I look forward to watching you on your journey.
Brilliant. Thank you, James.
Thanks for listening to the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle Podcast. I want to load you up with some free stuff right now. So if you want to go to jamesswanwick.com/guide, I will send you my Quit Alcohol Guide, which has helped six-figure entrepreneurs and top professionals reduce or quit drinking. You can also text the word QUIT GUIDE to the number 44222 if you're in the US, of course. It doesn't really work anywhere outside of the US. But if you're in the US on your mobile phone and you'd like that guide, text the word QUIT GUIDE to the number 44222, or you can go to jamesswanwick.com/guide. If you'd like to schedule a free 15-minute call with one of my top coaches, just an exploratory call to see if or how we can help you, then you can go to jamesswanwick.com/schedule, or you can text the word Project 90 to the number 44222 if you're listening in the US on a mobile phone. That's jamesswanwick.com/schedule, or you can text the word Project 90, that's one word, Project 90, to the number 44222. Feel free to send me a direct message over on my Instagram account, which is @JamesSwanwick. You can also watch video episodes of this podcast and a series of other educational videos on my YouTube channel, which is James Swanwick 1, or you can direct message me on Facebook @JamesSwanwickOfficial. And finally, a request. Would you please now write a short review of the podcast inside of the Apple Podcast app on your phone or on iTunes on your desktop computer? Would you please give the show 5 stars and write a quick 1 or 2 sentence review? This will help the show get in front of even more listeners, potentially transforming someone's life. You can rate and review the show inside of your Apple Podcast app on your phone or over on iTunes on your desktop. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.